Hello guys, in this video we're going to take a look at creating a Node API which we will then access the data from in a React.js app. Alright, so you're going to need Node for this, and I'm using Node version 10 as you can see right here, and also npm, the Node package manager, version 6.9.0. Now this tutorial will work for newer versions of Node and older versions of Node as well. So to get started, we're just gonna build a very simple Node API. This is the most basic form of an API you can build, but it would probably make sense for someone starting out to start by creating a simple API. So the first thing we're gonna need is the Express generator, because Express is the framework we're gonna use for the API. So simply just type npm install Express generator, and then G for global, and that's it. It's installed. Then we can type Express flag H, and we can see the different options for using the Express generator right here. So as you can see, we can see what views we're gonna be using, and so on and so on. For this example, we're gonna ignore the actual view, and we're just gonna create a simple project by typing Express my API. And that's it. The project has been installed. So let's see the into my API. And then we're gonna install all the dependencies in this project by typing npm install. And while this is installing, it's already finished, but you can go ahead and let's see here. Open up the folder in your preferred text editor. I'm using Sublime text. Where do we have it? My API. Close that down. So here is the basic Express framework project we have started or created. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into routes here, and now each route is basically a path in the URL which will then be executed depending on the path. I won't go over everything in Express, but enough to get you started. So as you can see here, the routes are already initialized for us in the app.js file, and we will be using this finished route here in this tutorial. And as you can see, it's a route which says when the URL is users, we're going to use the users router. The users router is required here, and it's located in routes/users. So let's go into routes and then users. So here we can define what we want to happen when this route is initialized by the Express framework. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to create a really simple route. I'm also going to change the intention to width 4. So what we're going to do is let's create a simple array. We can call it data array. And let's just return some data from here. So let's return an array of objects. So let's say name John, age 12, and then just go ahead and copy this like that. Let's create a new object here, name Lisa, age 15, and then we got Nils here, age 50. All right. So now we just have to return the array when we're calling the API, which we will be doing later in React. So we're gonna return it in JSON format. So result.json, and we're gonna return a new object with a property called data, which contains the data array. All right. So just like that. So now that we finished the basic route, we're also gonna need to initialize something called CORS. It stands for cross-origin resource sharing, which will enable our React app that we will create later to connect to this API right here, alright? Without CORS, it would not work. There will be an error because of our applications using different origins. So we're gonna, still in the my API folder, we're gonna say npm install CORS, and then let's save it as well. So now that's installed, let's open up app.js, and up here let's just basically include CORS. So let's say require CORS. Now that it's required, we have to use it as well. So right here under app, let's tell our app to use the CORS. So use, we want to use CORS, and we're gonna pass it an origin, which is the origin we will be calling from. All right, and in this case the origin is gonna be localhost 3001, and now this is the actual place or React.js app will be calling this API from, which we will create in just a second. All right, so now that that's done, we can go ahead and start up the actual API. And we got an error here. Let's see, app juice CORS. Oh, I forgot. It's supposed to be like this. So let's try that again. npm start. Now, as you can see, the API has been started on port 3000 on a local network. So just to check it out now, see what we got, let's go into this route here. So let's open up a web browser, and it's gonna say localhost 3000. We're gonna see, okay, welcome to Express, which means everything is set up correctly, and then /users. And as you can see now, we're actually getting the data we're printing out right here. All right, the data we're gonna return from the API, which is just a object with a property which contains an array with more objects with name and age properties. All right, so we got our basic API set up. So next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna just create a simple React.js app. So to do this, we're gonna first of all cd into the folder where you want to create the app, and then we're gonna use npx and say create React app, and let's just call it my app. So what we're gonna do in the React app is we simply just gonna output the data we're gonna fetch from our API here on port 3000, and we're gonna be running our React app at the origin we specified to give access to the API. So on port 3001, and it's gonna do this by default since port 3000 is already taken by the API. So that's it. Let's cd into my app, and then we just have to say npm start to fire it up. I'm gonna open up the project in Sublime text as well right here, and I'm gonna go to source and app.js. I'm also gonna change the syntax to Babel. If you haven't got Babel installed, you can install it for Sublime text. It's very simple. Just look up a tutorial online also gonna change the indentation to tab width 4. And let's see in the meanwhile here if or app starting. Yeah, so as you can see, something else already running on port 3000, which is our API. So let's start it on the port. And now it's starting up on 3001 instead, all right? So it should start any second now. So yeah, we got our basic React app running. So let's open up the project, and I'm gonna delete all code here, except app. We can still use that. I'm also just gonna re-indent this here to make it a little bit easier to read. And we can remove the logo, we won't be using that. So now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna use this app.js component to get access to the API right here. All right. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna define a constructor for our component class. So constructor passing props, then call super props, and we're gonna set a state of the component, and let's call this users, and it's gonna be an empty array for now. We will populate this array later with the data from the API. All right, so now we got that set up. We're also gonna define the component did mount method. This is a lifecycle method inside React.js, which is called as soon as this component is basically rendered to the DOM inside the browser. All right. Now in component did mount, we're gonna use the fetch method of React. It's defined like this. Then all we have to do is pass URL, and the URL is of course the URL to our API. So localhost port 3000. Okay. We're gonna pass then, and we're gonna say response, and we're gonna take the response we're getting from the API and convert it to JSON format. And then again, we're gonna take the result that we're getting from the response.json format, pass in an arrow function here, simply as not to lose context of this. All right, this refers to the class instance we're in, and we're gonna be setting the state using the this keyword, so we can't lose the reference to the state class instance. All right, and then we're gonna say if res.data. Let's see what we call that here in the users API. So the data property, if we're getting the data property from the API, let's start by simply as console.log res.data, and let's see here what we got. An error. No error. So open up inspecting console. Oh yeah, that we're getting there. Fetch logo 3000, then response. So token JSON at position 0. Where is the error? Oh yeah, we can't be getting it from there. We will be getting it from users. Let's see now. So yeah, I just typed the wrong. Of course, we're gonna be pointing to the users route of the API, right? So what just happened was basically we weren't getting any data because there's no response in JSON from where we were calling, right? So now we're calling the right API, we're getting the response, converting to JSON, and we're taking the response, checking if we got any data. You could also type like this: if res and res.data, is for safety reasons, so nothing will crash. Console.log res.data, and this is the data array that we were setting earlier, right? So nothing special there, it's working as it should. Now what we want to do is we want to take this REST data and update the state of this component. So we're gonna say this.setState, which is a built-in React function, and we're gonna say users, And then we're going to use a spread syntax here. So we're going to say dot 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 this dot state dot users, comma dot 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 res dot data. Okay, so let's just update that. So check so we don't have any errors and everything seems to be working all right. So the spread syntax, what it does in this case, it takes the current users array in the state and then applies each object of the, or each the array we're getting from the API. All right. So it's simply just basically it's what do you call it? Combining these two arrays. All right, which is exactly what we want. So now we just have to also access this data, because what we want in this case, we want to be able to output the data in the React app. So to do that, let's start off by defining a function here. We can call it render users. And in the render method, we're going to call the render users function, so this dot render users. And in here, we're just going to take the users array from the state. We're going to apply a map function, which is a basic JavaScript function, which will basically create a copy of the array with the custom functions we want on the array. I'm going to show you. So what we're going to do here, first of all, if this dot state dot users dot length is smaller than or equal to 0, that means there's no data rendered yet. Let's just return a div here that says loading. Right? So now when we open up here, you can see for a millisecond it says loading, but then it's populated as soon as the component mounts and updates the users array, so it's not empty anymore. So what we want to do if it's not empty, well, we want to map the array and output the result. So it's gonna say else. And we're gonna return this dot state dot users dot map, and in the map function we're gonna get value and the key, and we're gonna be using the arrow function here as well to not lose context of this. So for each user, let's return a new div. We're gonna pass the key property and give it the value of key. So this is something React.js uses internally to keep updated on which elements has changed or been deleted from the DOM. All right. Then we're also gonna say yes to output the result. Let's get value.name, and also let's get value.age. And close off the div right here. So let's see now what we got. So as you can see now, we're getting the result outputted in the React app, which is exactly what we want. So that's it. Now we just created a very simple basic API, and you're getting the data from a React app. Now what you would want to do in this case, you would probably want to get this data from a database or something similar instead of just declaring the data here. So that's the next thing you can start looking at. But this is enough to give you a basic idea of how it works. And yeah, then we're getting the data here and we're simply outputting it. So yeah, that's it for creating a very simple API. One more example here as well. When we're using the set state here, just to show you, if we pop in an existing user here, let's say name John1, and then let's say age 50. If we run this now, as you can see, we're getting him outputted on the top, and that's because we're simply not just setting the users array with the result of the data. We're actually combining the current API, the current users array with the data we're getting from the API. So you can use this kind of logic to push more and more data onto something during the lifetime of the component. All right. So that's it. I hope you learned something. Bye bye.